it is my pleasure now to introduce to you Stella Sabiiti, who was one of my mediation professors when I went to school in Austria. And it is an extreme pleasure to bring her here from Uganda, and she's been working in Ethiopia lately, to share with you her experience and her story and what brought her to mediation and to dispute resolution in general, and how she approaches it as well. So her full bio is in your materials package, so please take a look later. But for now, I'd just like to extend a welcome to Stella and turn it over to her.
Thank you. Thank you very much, CD. I was so surprised a few months ago when I got an email from CD, and he was very kind enough to attach a photograph, just in case I'd forgotten. Because that was many years ago, I think 2007 or 2008. So thank you so much for welcoming me here in your midst. As I've been introduced, I'm Stella Sabiiti. I come from Uganda. I'm 63 years old. I've got 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, and I've got 3 grandchildren. And one of my children is here, Moses. He's here at the back. My family has lived on 3 different continents as refugees, running away from political turmoil in my country. And Moses is actually a Canadian citizen. He was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, 37 years ago. So that's why I decided to bring him here. I need someone to keep reminding me about the time, because I'm a storyteller. Most of my lectures are not like lecture or teaching, it's sharing stories, sharing parts of our lives. That's what I do, and that's what I'm going to do today. So I need someone, CD or your colleagues, please say something or make some signs to remind me. So I'm here to talk about why I do the work that I've been doing for the last 36 years. For the last 36 years, 6 years, I've been working on bringing conflicting parties together to find common ground, and then sit together and talk, get rid of their problems, get rid of things that distance them, because we are all meant to be one on this planet, and then find solutions and way forward, not only for themselves, but also for the communities where they come from, or the communities that they're representing. I've done all sorts of mediation or even negotiation, gone through so many processes at all different levels. So we call them villages in Africa. So the smallest community that you can come from is a village. And mostly in a village, you have people who are related either through blood or through marriage. So a village is the closest community you can have in Africa. But then beyond that, you have clans and you have tribes, others call them ethnic groups. Those are not our words. That's not the way we classify ourselves, but that's how we were told by the British. That's how they classify us. But ourselves, we call ourselves human beings. And I don't know how many of you have heard of the word Ubuntu. Ubuntu. For us, a human being is Umuntu. Many people together are called Abantu or Bantu. So Ubuntu is the thing that unites all of us human beings. And we believe that without you, any of you in this room, without you, then I don't exist. I only exist through you. So that's why in our work, although it's modern day conflicts with guns, especially the AK-47, the Kalashnikov, and landmines and so on, we still bring in the traditional ways of dealing with conflict. So I also work at the highest level, at UN, United Nations level. Maybe here in Canada, the UN is not all that important because your governments are running very well. But on our continent, we need the United Nations. We also need the African Union, which is the equivalent of the United Nations, but on the African continent. In this region, I would compare that with the Organization of American States, and then others, and so on and so forth. So I work at the lowest level, like I've explained, the village, but I also work middle level with governments, and then I work also at international level. Why did I start doing this work? This is where my story begins. I think that many of you in this room have seen the movie the last king of Scotland. Okay, that's about our story. It's about my life. It's not made about me. It's made about our president at that time called Idi Amin Dada. And that man was our president in the 70s. He came to power, I think, in 1971, and he was overthrown in 1979. And that's when we were in Canada, when he was overthrown. But before Idi Amin left the throne, before he was overthrown as a president, he committed so many atrocities. And we couldn't understand way back in the 70s how someone with one of the most beautiful smiles could at the same time do things that were so unimaginable. We just couldn't believe that. Idi Amin was a kind of president that he used to drive himself in an open jeep. That's how much power he had. He wasn't afraid. So he would be driving along the streets of the city or the outskirts, and if he sees children playing football in the open field, he would stop his jeep, jump out, and go and join them. He was that kind of leader. But at the same time, he was also causing us a lot of harm. So this was 1976, the year that I got married. I married quite young. I was still a university student. And at that time, Uganda had come to a standstill. The economy was down, the shops were empty, there was no one going to till the land to grow food, but thank God Uganda is on the equator, where the weather and the climate is very friendly. You just throw an orange seed. We say you're eating orange and you throw a seed, when you turn around, there is an orange tree or a mango tree. That's how fertile Uganda is. But during that time of Idi Amin, no one went out to grow food. And thank God that we have a very good climatic situation. So food was growing itself, otherwise it would have died. So one day, my husband dropped me at the campus, because my husband worked away from Kampala, the capital city. So he dropped me at the campus where I had a room. And everything was so strange. It was so peaceful. So for me, when I'm working with groups that live in situations of violent conflict, before any violent conflict erupts, I say, listen to the atmosphere. Actually, the atmosphere tells you everything. If it's so silent, better watch out. Don't say, wow, this is peaceful, this is nice. No, it's warning you. Because there is no dogs barking, there are no cows making sound, the birds are very quiet. So that is a warning sign, an early warning sign that bad things are going to happen. So that happened on that morning. I can't remember what day it was. I think it was a Tuesday or a Monday, something like that. My husband dropped me and we're wondering, where is everybody? This campus is full of people, but where are they? So he said goodbye, he left. And I went up to my room, and my roommate called Judy. So any name I mention, it means I've got permission to mention, because I've spoken with them, and I've got their permission. My roommate's name is Judy. She was in the room braiding hair. We like to do that in Africa. She was braiding hair of a friend of ours called Brenda. Brenda has since died. She's no longer with us. But Judy was braiding Brenda's hair, and then I said, what is going on? They said, oh, you didn't hear? The soldiers came this morning and they shot in the air and disturbed a few students, and then they left. And some students threw stones at them, but everything is good. So because I'd left, I've spent some, I think the previous week I hadn't attended so many of my lectures. And also at that time, the lecturers were not all coming to the lecture theater because there was no fuel for them. There was nothing. Uganda was at a standstill. So we, as students, didn't every day go to the lecture theater. So we just get some books. There was no librarian. We just go in and get books, go to your room and do the reading and make notes yourself. So I asked Judy to give me some of her notes, and I was just copying notes and reading, and we're chit-chatting as young girls. And then there was a knock at the door. So it was. And we said, you soldiers, go away, come on, And the knocking turned into a banging sound. Then we realized these were not our friends. We thought it was our friends playing jokes on us, because we used to do that quite a lot. We thought, come on, soldiers, go away. It was indeed the soldiers. So we had bang, bang, fungua mulango. Fungua mulango is Kiswahili. Swahili is a language we have in Eastern, Southern, and the Horn of Africa. And it means open the door, open the door. Where I come from, even your own brother, if he wants to do something bad to you, he will not shout at you in your language. He will do it in Kiswahili. It's a language that many people use for good things, but also for bad things. So they were shouting, fungua mulango, open the door, open the door. Brenda and I ran to the balcony, and we just crouched like this. And Judy, my roommate, just entered her bed and covered herself. And at the same time, the soldiers broke down our door. And I remember at that time, the handles of the door were knobs, door knobs. And the knob was broken, and it came on the floor, and it came, and it was rolling towards us where Brenda and I were hiding. And I remember I was the closest, and I was thinking, please stop there, stop there. The soldiers will see you and follow you, and they will discover us. I was talking to the doorknob. The doorknob didn't pay attention. It came right to me. And the soldiers, of course, it was a small room. They would have found me anyway. They would have found us. And they came straight through to the balcony, and they picked me up. So I was the first one to be picked out of the room. And they shoved me out of the room. Also, Brenda, the same. It was about 5, 6 soldiers in uniform, heavily armed. We don't know how they managed to come upstairs to our room, and we hadn't heard any sound because everything was so quiet. We don't know how they did it. So I think I was on the 4th floor. Every time we reached the top of the floor, they would hit me with the butt of the gun and kick me, and I would go flying. So I never went step by step down. I was flying over the steps, over the stairs. And I remember at some point, I fell down so much, I lost consciousness, and I remember recovering, and I couldn't breathe. It was as if someone was holding my mouth and my nose, but I think that's what they mean by saying that air was punched out of the lungs, I think. I just couldn't breathe. Then I saw someone near me, and I thought, someone is coming to help me to breathe. But they were coming to just hit me more with the boots and the guns. And eventually, I'm very conscious that I shouldn't give details, so I'm just summarizing. It's not nice to hear some of these things. So they picked me up, and this hall of residence has about 12 or 13 floors, and on each floor you have more than 10 rooms, and in each room you have more than 5 girls. So this is a large building with so many girls, but there was no one to witness what was happening to me and my friend. And I remember feeling, but this is so unfair. If I'm going to die, and the soldiers were saying, we've been ordered to take you to Bachindie. Bachindie is a place, if they took you that time, you would never be found. And it's in that movie, The Last King of Scotland. If you have time, please check it out. Then I was saying, but God, it's so unfair. How come I'm going to die and there is no one to be a witness or someone to say, no, don't take her, she's innocent, she didn't do anything. Why? And then also one thing that hit me was, I'm going to die and no one will tell my mother. My mother will not know anything about it. I found those two things they were irritating me. I was angry that I shouldn't just die just like that. They took me and Brenda to another hall of residence that belonged to the boys. And we thought everything was quiet. But when we entered the courtyard, that's when we discovered that actually a lot of bad things were happening. These boys had been tortured the whole morning and we didn't know. They had locked all the gates, the soldiers had locked the gates, and they had tortured the boys. And they'd ordered them to walk on their knees, to crawl on the knees without putting their hands down. So by the time we saw them, the knees were nothing but flesh. So I know, I work for gender issues, especially in conflict situations. I know that around the world we are talking about, to be aware that women are targeted, especially in situations of conflict. What we forget to mention is that men also are targeted, and especially young men. I think when we talk about inclusivity, we should talk about both sides. We're not talking about removing the limelight from one side and switching it off there and switching it on this side. So these boys, I couldn't believe that anything like that could happen to a human being. We'd never seen any violence like that. And I thought, okay, now, if I'm going to go through this, I don't know how I will manage. So they told us, on your knees. So Brenda and I went on our knees. We were the only two girls. And then they said, okay, walk. And they were speaking Kiswahili, walk. It's not crawling, it's walk. So we got up to walk, and then they hit us, walk like these boys. And we did it a little bit, but then they got me out, and other soldiers came. Truckloads were now coming. This was a real operation. And the soldiers had, the campus was on lockdown. All the gates were locked. No one could go in or come out except the soldiers themselves. I mean, truckloads of soldiers. I think one thing that I was lucky in that the soldiers that had got me out of my room, were the commanders of the operation. So I had the privilege of hanging out with the commanders of the violent operation. Really seriously, because I think if I'd been one of in general terms, my life wouldn't have been transformed. So because I was with these men, I was able to observe them very well and hear their planning and see everything. So that helped me to gain an insight that I wouldn't have otherwise gained. So I think I'm reaching the heart of my story, why I'm telling all this, and how it led to my doing peace work. So the soldiers took myself and Brenda, put us outside. By then they opened the gates of the boys' hostel and they forced all the boys out. They were crawling. But Brenda and I, they put us under a tree where the sort of command post was. So we sat on the grass and then they would come. They had gadgets. That's why I'm calling it beyond beating. It was torture. They had gadgets. They had metal things. They had things with claws. They had things with hooks. They had things with knobs. They had heavy metal things. They had all sorts of things. And all the time, every time they hit me or they cut me, because they cut us quite a lot, they would always say, "We saw you a few days ago, standing, mobilizing all the students that you want your Kabaka back." Kabaka is a local king in the tribe where Kampala, the capital city, is. But I'm not even from that tribe. And we didn't have kings anymore because the previous president had removed them. So we didn't have kings anymore. So I knew they were telling lies. And one thing I haven't added is that I was pregnant. I was expecting our first child, the child that Moses follows. She's called Rita. She's 39 years old. She's the mother. She's the one who made me the grandmother. That means something went right because she survived and I also survived. So what helped us to survive, the two of us, Rita and I? When I felt I was about to die, you feel it. You feel all the strength has gone. You begin to think strange thoughts. And I thought, okay, this is how people die. And I think I remember, I think I was talking to God or ancestors. I don't know who it is. That voice, that's someone you speak with when you are so happy and on your own, or when you are so sad and on your own. You are alone, you find that secluded place somewhere in our minds or our hearts. I don't know where it is. But the voice that you speak to and the voice that answers back. And I remember saying, Lord, I'm not ready to die. I have to find out why these soldiers, not why are they beating me, no. I wanted to find out why they were accusing me of doing something they know for sure I hadn't done. They were telling so many lies, and they would say, we saw you at the night disco, we call it disco, and we saw you dancing the bump. Dance the kung fu, pa, pa, pa. We had a dance and we were calling it da-da-da. And they forced us to do that, and we're all cut, we were bleeding, half naked and covered in mud, because they'd also made mud baths and forced us to go in and roll, I think, for our wounds. I don't know, but to make it as painful as possible and to belittle us. So God, why are they accusing me of something that I haven't done? And worst of all, they know that. I know that they're telling lies. And why isn't that scaring them? Why doesn't it stop them telling lies? So then I said, no, I have to find this out for myself before I die. Before dying, I have to find this out. So how do I do this? Do I ask them a question? Yes, I could. But the whole day, I hadn't heard my voice since they pulled me out of the room. So do I still have a voice? Can I talk? Will I find the words or not? Then I got brainwave. Aha, okay. If I expose my face and look them straight in the eye, I will discover the answer. Because when you're being tortured or cut or beaten up, I don't know how many of you have experienced that, but the first thing you want to protect is your face. So everyone who is being hit, beaten, and everything, usually the head is looking down, and the arms are protecting like this. And that's why we call them defensive wounds. You find most people have cuts and things and bruises. It's because they're defending their face. But we protect the face because of the eyes. Because the eyes are so, we see the world through the eyes. I think the eyes are very important to us. So you're trying to protect them. So when I realized that I might not have a voice anymore, I thought, okay, if I expose my face and look at these soldiers directly in the eye, I will find my answer there. I don't need my face. I don't need my eyes. I'm dying, so I don't care. But I have to find out why these soldiers are doing this. So I slowly did this, exposed my face, and I picked only one soldier, the one who was nearest to me, and I looked at him. What do you think I saw in his face? I don't know if you can interact with me. What do you think I saw? What do you think I saw? Fear? Anger? Sorry? Shame? Sadness? You see how the answers are beginning to change? The answers you're giving me, and I'm receiving them all equally? Indeed, I discovered that these men were not enjoying what they were doing to us. These men, I could see that they were crying internally at what they were doing to us. So all the shame, all the what, if there is anger, it's not angry at us. All this force, because all I knew, it's using my ears to hear their voice and judge the mood they were in, and also the force with which they were torturing us and hitting us and climbing on us and jumping on us and doing all those things. That's how I thought, okay, these men must be extremely angry, they're violent, and their face must be looking very, very horrible. But when I opened and exposed my face and looked them in the eye, it was a shock. I saw these men were internally crying. And again, I remember talking to that voice, God or my ancestors or someone, and saying, but I was ready to die now. I found the answer. But you've given me yet another assignment. And this assignment was to talk to these soldiers and tell them, it's okay. I understand. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. I will not hold it against you. Don't worry. You're just doing your job. That was now the second assignment. But I thought, how do I do this? These soldiers so heavily armed, definitely in control of the situation. Where do I start? Then I got a bright idea again. And this voice inside me said, look for something you have in common with them and just address that. So now I ask myself, I know CD knows this story. I ask myself, what do I have in common with these men? Can any of you tell me what I have in common with these soldiers? So they're human? Yes. So we share some humanness. What else? What did I have in common? Pain? When I saw them feeling so sorry, feeling sad, definitely it moved me from where I was and I entered their world. So I could see some of that suffering, some of that discomfort and terrible things in their life. So now physically, at the physical level, what else did I have in common with these soldiers? We are in the same place, tied together by the same situation. Also, I was married. These men were not young boys. I always say, and I don't know if I'm politically incorrect by saying this, but in Africa, if a son in a family refuses to get married, after being told, you have to get married, it's not just the parents, but the uncles and the aunties and the grandparents, everyone is pushing you to get married. Moses is not yet married. Yeah, we really give them a hard time. And if you're not careful as a young man, if you've been warned several times, one night you'll go home and you'll find there is someone the family has chosen for you in your bed. So I knew these men, definitely were married, whether it was by choice or by whatever, because of the age. And I also thought they must be having children. So I'm married, that's what we share in common. We are all human beings, we suffer, we love. So we share all that. I have children, I'm expecting a baby. They must be having children in their home, if not their own children, maybe nephews and nieces and the next door neighbors' children. We live like that in our communities and in our cities. It's just open. And I've just discovered that here also in Vancouver, and I'm very happy. That neighborliness thing and opening your doors to even people you don't know that well. I like it very much. So then I said, okay, I discovered what I have in common with them. They have families, they must be married. No, they have children. So I just targeted that same poor soldier, that officer. And for the first time, I opened my voice and I said, sir, what did your wife cook for you last night? He just couldn't believe it. First of all, that I had a voice. Secondly, that I dared speak up or speak out. And thirdly, that I talked about his wife. So he hit me so hard and hit me and kicked me, and they had a whip, the whip, and at the end was a metal knob, and they just work it up like this, and then once, and then it coils around you, and then they pull. That's how we got cut. They had other things. So he just did more of that. And his friends, what has she done? What has she asked? And he told them, what? You're abusing our wives. They came and hit me. When they finished, I asked the same question again. Again, they hit me. When they stopped, I asked them the same question. And then I realized that the beatings became less and less violent, and I was encouraged. And I kept asking the question until one of the soldiers came and sat down next to me and answered what they'd eaten the night before. And then another one answered. And then I got courage and I asked, and your children? Did you take your children to school this morning, or did they go in the school army truck, or how did they get there? Do they go to the military school? So I talked about their children, their life that morning, and they answered and answered. And we sat under that tree. That tree is still there. It's a very strong tree. I think it's a muvule tree or something, one of the hardwoods. And we chit-chatted. And Brenda, now she's not alive anymore, I'm so sorry. But Brenda kept saying, she was like my witness, because they didn't have much attention on her. I don't know why. They would come and beat her and do something, but most of the attention was on me. And they had, by the way, more truckloads of soldiers had come, and they'd emptied the 2 halls of residence. So all the students were being marched up and down and being punished and so on by the other soldiers. For us, we were getting special treatment from the command post, as I call it. So Brenda would say, I noticed that every time a soldier looked at her like this, she would go, wow, Mama Nyabo, Mama Nyabo. She's calling her mother, like, Mama, help me, oh, like that. just by the soldiers looking at her. And then later she told me that then she saw Stella was being hit so much and cut so much, but she wasn't saying anything. So she also decided pain is nothing. And from that moment on, she never felt any pain. And one thing I learned from there was that we, as human beings, each one of us has more than one, we are more than one person. Because I remember very clearly, as the soldiers were doing whatever they were doing to me, I wasn't feeling it because I was standing here and I could see my body there, that they were cutting and doing all sorts of bad things to. I was a witness. I wasn't in that body. So strange. And every time I share this experience with others who have gone through this kind of situation, and there are so many around the world, they say the same thing, that they discover that they don't feel pain. The pain is the first hit or the first slap or whatever. After that, you don't feel the pain. Again, they see their bodies being tortured, being raped and all that, but they don't feel it, they said. Until later, the two of you come back together. Maybe the spiritual you and the body you, I really don't know. I haven't done any study on that. I don't know what it is. So we interacted with these soldiers, and in the end, they blew the whistle because we were busy laughing. We were having a good time. I don't know where that came from, but the soldiers and I were having such a good time. In the end, they blew the whistle, gathered their soldiers, loaded them on the trucks, and the operation was over, and they left. And as soon as they left, actually for me, that's when I realized, oh, these soldiers have been beating us. That's when now I started feeling the pain, but throughout I hadn't. And we just crawled back to our hall of residence, which was just next door. And why my tears came, it was now we have the British culture. We have tea time, we have high tea and all those things. So in the evening, everybody has to drink a cup of tea with bread and so on. And so the cooks had made that high tea. And instead of laying it in the dining room inside the building, they'd laid it out in the parking lot, on the ground, in the dust and everything. So they had teacups, they had sugar, they had the few things they had. It wasn't so rich because the time was not that good, the situation in Uganda, but they had. And they were all collapsed among the cups and the sugar and the teapots, and they were crying. These cooks, they were men and women. That's when it hit me, oh my God, something has happened to us. And in a short while, ambulances arrived to take us to hospital. All those who were badly, badly injured were loaded onto the ambulance. But for me, I have to tell you, as soon as we left the gate, I jumped out of a moving ambulance. No pain. I mean, we'd gone through so much, I could do anything. Jump in front of a car, jump into the swimming pool, you know, that's how the situation is. So, but I jumped out of a moving vehicle, and thank God shortly after that, I met my husband and he took me to the hospital. This is what I have to share with you. But that, looking at the soldiers, looking them in the eye, and discovering that they were suffering more than I was suffering, that's what I realized. I made a promise to myself that once I finished all these studies and I was able to go to work, I would work with armed groups. So I don't so much work with refugees, tortured people, raped women and boys and girls and men, but I work with the people who do that to them. Because I'm convinced that no matter how much we tell them, stop it, don't kill people, don't cut people up, don't arbitrarily arrest people, they will continue to do it. Because we are talking about the result of a chain of events. And we don't have the power to do that. We don't have the power to make them stop doing those things, because it's too late by the time they do that. So I want to address this side of things to prevent. And I feel that they have the power to prevent doing bad things. Because that day I discovered they were just as good as any of us. I wasn't any better than them. They weren't any worse than me. And I'm still convinced that if I was pushed in the corner somewhere and I had the weapons, I would be able to do the same thing? I don't know. I just think so. I don't know. There is an organization in Uganda. It has a logo which says, "We are all potential prisoners," that any of us can go wrong. So what can we do to prevent people doing wrong? I was watching a movie on the plane as we're coming in. It's 2.5 Men. I think it was 2.5 Men, yeah, I think it was. It was a comedy anyway. And someone was saying, yeah, it was 2.5 Men, and it said, to raise children. And this was someone who was a bit like drunk or high on something, and they had brought him in to be a witness to this. The two men were pretending to be gay, and they were pretending to get married so that they can adopt a child. That's the episode. And they brought in their friends, and this guy was really like, drunk or high. And then he was saying, yeah, it takes the whole village people to raise a child. So the village people of YMCA. For us, it really does take the whole village to raise a child. And I think that just as much as, I mean, we praise ourselves for successfully bringing up a child or children, but we should also take the responsibility for not doing enough for those children that don't succeed that much, that go the other way, that we all feel that is very dangerous for them and everybody else around them. So I work to make sure that people realize that they have other alternative ways of addressing the situation that they are in that they don't like. That's what I dedicate myself to. And I think after lunch we have a session. So in that session I'm going to talk about my work working with armed groups, together with the military, together with the local communities, because we know that the leaders, the political leaders, especially in Africa, are the ones who are clashing. But as they clash, this is a game. As they clash, who is suffering most? It's the communities. So the communities' strength and resilience has to be built, but they also have to have a voice to say, we put you there. We put you there, or you're there to represent us and to make sure that everything is good for us and not to destroy us. So that is the kind of work I do, and I do that across so many different levels, and I work all over the world. I've worked in Colombia, I've worked in Thailand, I've worked in Europe. I've worked in the Caribbean, but mostly my focus is Africa, because that's where I come from. I thank you so much.